Good morning, everyone. This is Dina Perry. I'm the Executive Director of Broadband with the Department of Community Affairs. I want to welcome you to our webinar today on the petition process after the publication of our map. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you that has participated in the map to make it such a success. Without your cooperation and collaboration, this would not have been possible. We have a team of our mapping folks today on board that will walk through the petition process. We'll be talking about petitioner qualifications, the petition process, the time frame, the GBDI petition portal, submitting a petition, and annual map refresh. One of the things I'd just like to mention, I think we have the ability to mute, but if you are on your phone and have dialed in, we ask that everyone mute, and when it's time for questions and answers, we ask that you use the chat feature and also the hand raising feature. So the GBDI team that you'll hear from today, as I said, I'm Dina Perry. Jason Sell will be walking us through the process of registration and illustrating how it looks on our website. Bill Price is available for questions. All of you are familiar with him. He is with GTA, and you have worked with him in gathering the data for the mapping. Eric McRae, the Executive Director at CVIOG, he is also on for questions and will be speaking on behalf of the process. We also have Andrew with CTC Engineering, who will talk about the technical requirements in submitting the petition process. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jason Sale so that he can begin walking you through the process. Jason, are you there?
Hello, can everybody hear me? I think I was having some technical this morning.
There you are, Jason. Yes, we can hear you now.
Perfect. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, we should be good to go. Again, I apologize. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, team. Just a few quick guidelines before we dive in. Please stay on mute during the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. And if we don't get around to them, you can email us at petition@dca.ga.gov. So with that, I want to welcome everyone to our webinar, and I want to begin the process by highlighting some key dates for the petition process. Now, before I do this, I just want to point out what the petition process actually is. And it is a legislative requirement to serve as a map correction mechanism. So it's really the final phase of publishing the Georgia broadband map. So with that, we published on June 30th. And so we basically allowed 2 weeks for you to look at the data, digest everything, and now we're moving into the petition window where we can actually correct the map based on your understanding of the data. So to lay out some key dates here on our timeline, July 15th is when everything kicks off. That means that you can go to our website and register, and within 5 days of you registering, DCA will render a decision saying that you can move forward with the petition process. After that, you will have a 45-day window to submit all of your evidence And all of those artifacts are due by September 15th. That's a hard date that you need to keep in mind. And then DCA has a review period based on the evidence that you've submitted. So now I'll go through the process kind of in more detailed steps. So to begin, and I just mentioned this, petition registration opens on July 15th. On that date, you'll be able to go to our website, hover over the Maps feature, and you'll see the Petition tab. Now this is on our website already. It's on there today. So you can go on there and learn more about the petition process, but you won't actually be able to register until July 15th. So the key thing to know here is come back to this website on the 15th to start your registration and begin the petition process. So once the 15th hits, you will be able to register, and by clicking register here, it will take you to a registration form. Now this form ascertains pretty simple information: your email, your organization, supervisor, petition info. So under the petition info tab, you'll be indicating which counties that you'll be petitioning in. So, and you can multi-select. So if you have 5 counties where there would be petitions, you would indicate those 5 counties here. Now it's important, very important, that you realize that we will only be accepting 1 petition per organization. So if you have petitions in multiple counties, you need to ensure that you are capturing them in this registration form. So about the registration form in its entirety, and you submit, you will receive emails all throughout the process, kind of guiding you through and letting you know kind of where you are in the process. So once you've hit submit on that registration form, you'll receive an email kind of saying, hey, it's being reviewed. Please give DCA up to 5 days to review everything. And then once we approve you, you'll receive an email with login credentials and a link where you can follow it and actually set up your account. So if I was to click directly on this screenshot of this email, it's going to take me to this page on our website where we're actually going to set up our account to be a petitioner. So we'll put in our email, we'll set up a password, and then in that phase, we'll be able to actually access our petition dashboard. And this is really the home of everything petition related on our broadband website. And so from here, you can click into your petition dashboard, and here is where you're going to be able to download all of the necessary artifacts, compile everything, and then upload the data that you've collected. Now with that, I'm going to pass it over to Andrew from CTC to actually go through the detailed requirements in filing a petition.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. It's Andrew Afflerbach. So I'd like to walk through the process in more detail. And when we look at it, there are basically 2 major scenarios. The first is where you're trying to prove that in your petition that an area that is classified on the map as unserved is actually served. The second scenario is where the petitioner is looking to prove that an area that the map is classified as served is unserved. So we'll start with the first, and there are 4 parts to it basically. The first is that you're going to get a detailed template, and I'll show you some screenshots from that will walk you through the information that we're looking for. On that template, in addition to questions that you're going to answer, there's going to be a description of mapping that's going to be required. There are going to be field photos that you're going to be required to provide, and those photos are going to have to be of very specific things and done in a specific way. And you're going to be required to provide for 2 locations in each census block speed tests, and that's according to the FCC speed test requirements, so many of you are familiar with that. So let's take a look at what the template looks like here. Pretty much straightforward information. We're going to be looking for each census block to have this template filled out. Very important that you put the full census block in, and there's going to be explanation in the materials you get about file names. It's going to be very important that the file names and the folders and so forth be organized in the way that you're requested to do that. You're going to fill out this information. This is an example here where the block is served by, where you're saying that the block is served by DSL. So someone has picked number 3 here, which opens up a number of questions below that are DSL specific. If you were stating that you serve with fiber or with coaxial cable, that would bring up a different set of questions. So basically this gets filled out. Next slide. And when you're done filling that out, you're going to provide for each census block a GIS shapefile, or if you'd rather, a KMZ map with the following instructions for the census block. It's going to include the census block area that's in question, and it's going to include the cable route from that census block back to your central office or wire center or hub facility, depending on the architecture of your network. And within the census block area, you're going to show the boundary. You're going to show where the CO or hub facility is. Along the way, you're going to say what the physical medium of the cable is, including if it changes from one type of medium to another. And you're going to show the DSLAMs, remote terminals, OLTs, and nodes. Within the block itself, you're going to indicate where are the locations that you serve and the locations that you don't serve, but you're capable of serving within 10 days of the request. And of course, the 10 days of a request is in the legislation. So all the cable routes have to be shown, and all the tap locations have to be shown. Of course, that's to demonstrate your ability to serve those locations within a request. Next slide. And along with that, we're looking for photographs that are taken in the field. These have to be geolocated photographs with your EXIF data included, so we know where those actually are. Within the area, we're looking at 10 drop installations, and we're looking for the DSLAM or remote terminal electronics, or if it's HFC, we're looking for the node, and if it's fiber, we're looking for the OLT. So all that needs to be provided. Next slide. And then this is the format for the test data. Again, we're looking for 2 tests within each census block. The methodology is explained in the FCC document here, and you're going to have within the template a link to that document, enable you to click on that and get further information. And there are 3 types of methodologies that you can basically use for the testing, but we're looking for hourly tests, 6 p.m. to noon at the 2 locations within the block, and that's just the downstream and upstream speeds. I believe it's 80% of the tests have to be above 25 and 3, and that's also per the FCC standard. It's a little easier than the FCC test because we're not requiring latency. Next. And basically the whole process has been very methodically flow charted out, because we expect that given the amount of time that's available for the review, we don't want to have a lot of back and forth or any ambiguity in the process. But the key thing to note about the process as it's set up is that if we're finding that the data is incomplete, or if, let's say, within the template stage, we find something that disqualifies the petition, that's basically the end of the review process. It's not a case where all of the material is going to be reviewed if at the very beginning we find that the petition is not eligible. Next. So that's scenario one. The second is scenario two, and that's if a petitioner looks at the map, sees an area that the map says is served, but the petitioner believes it is unserved. And that goes into two separate categories. Next slide. So the first category is essentially if you, as the petitioner, had told DCA in an earlier part of the process that you serve that block, but it turns out that in fact you don't serve the block and you want to correct the error. The second category is one where you as the petitioner do not serve the census block, but it's a block that you know something about and you are very certain that that is an unserved block. So we want to make it possible for both of these to be changed. Next. So the first case, it's pretty trivial because essentially we want to make it possible and easy for the petitioner to just come out and say, well, you know, there was an error before, we want to correct it. It does not automatically change the designation of the block because we have to verify that there aren't other providers potentially serving the block. But essentially, we want to make that very, very straightforward. Next slide. So in the second category, where the petitioner is not the provider, it's somewhat more challenging. And in order to back up the petitioner's claim, the petitioner has to provide information to evaluate, which is basically a streamlined version of what we were talking about in scenario one. Also, DCA will contact the providers that claim to serve the census block and get their feedback. So it's possible that those providers may agree to the redesignation. In other words, they may agree that they do not serve that block. If it's still disputed, then what would happen then is that DCA will not redesignate that block purely on the basis of a petition. In other words, it's not sufficient evidence, but what will happen is that on the weight of that petition, DCA will identify that block as a disputed block, and DCA may later conduct on-site inspection or other scrutiny to sort out what the issue is in that block. Next slide. So the paperwork that has to be submitted again for two is a more streamlined version of scenario one. There's an Excel template, and depending on exactly what's being asked for, there's an ask for a map as well. Next. So in the simplest case, where a provider's coming in saying, look, we had said prior to this that we serve the area and we wanted to correct the record, we don't serve the area, then we basically, it's very, very easy. The provider just basically says that, and then you're told, thank you for notifying us, and then DCA goes through the process from there. Next slide. So, and then if it's the case where you're challenging the map, where you're saying, well, we believe that service, that block is in fact not served, even though it's claimed to be served, then you're first asked, do you believe that there's broadband service in any part of the block? So this is the case where you believe that there is some service there, but that the service is not the 80% of the block threshold, in which case you're then asked more questions about the service in the block as far as you understand it. Next slide. So for each provider, then the petitioner provides this information to the best that they can about what they believe the service is in that block. If in fact you're not saying that there's service in the block, if you're stating, well, we think that that block has never had any service at all, then you're asked to substantiate that claim. In this case, not by maps, but just basically by a written explanation as to why you believe that that's not the case and what you think is going on in that block. Next slide. So once again, with scenario 2, we have flow charted it, and we're looking to proceed in a very methodical way again, where if at an early stage of the process we see that the petition is not going to be compliant, then we stop our review, and basically that's the end of the review for that petition. Next slide. And finally, because this is not going to be a process that involves a DCA field survey, we are going to be requiring that the petitioner in this petition have an official signature that they're essentially stating to the best of their knowledge that this is the case, and so to basically add the required importance to the petition submittal. Next slide. And finally, again, timeline is very important. September 15 is when all the artifacts are due. As you might have sensed from the first part of the presentation here, there are a lot of artifacts, and there's a certain amount of work that's required. So we would recommend that the process start early, and that all the artifacts are due on September 15th, but we would recommend for purposes of the workflow and for purposes of making sure that you don't run out of time, that you start to get that in early. And then DCA is committed to rendering a decision on the census blocks and the petition process on November 30th. And with that, I'd like to thank you again for your time, and wish you well in your petitioning process.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate that. So circling back, now that you know the technical requirements, we're going to go over how to assemble that information and where to actually upload it. So before we dove into the requirements, I showed you this page. This is simply you logging into your petition dashboard, and from there you will be able to download all of the artifact requirements, the templates, and actually go in and upload them. So if you hit upload petition data, it'll take you to an upload screen where you can upload basically as many files as you need, as long as they don't hit 100 megabyte limit. You can upload all of those, and then you can actually log back in and check the status of these uploads. Once again, you will receive emails all throughout the process. As soon as you submit, you'll receive a confirmation, and then as your artifacts go through the review process, you'll be notified all along the way of when they change, when they're approved, when they're denied, this, that, and the other. So email will be key, and checking the status of your petition on our website is also an option. So finally, as an alternative to the map petition process, you can simply just wait until the refresh period for our 2021 Georgia Broadband Map. So to just quickly lay out the timeline for you, the refresh period is going to start on November 1. The data for the 2021 GBDI map is due January 15th, 2021, and the 2021 map will be published on June 30th. And I will allow my colleague Eric to speak here on the map refresh process. Eric, are you available?
I am. What I would say is that we plan on this year, if possible, using a footprint model for doing the map refresh. We will provide out to all of the providers a footprint based upon the parcel data, dissolved parcel data of the previous year's submission prior to the refresh period starting. And so we hope this will make that a simpler process going forward. And this will fall more into line with ultimately what the FCC plans on doing as well for submission in the future.
Perfect. And with that, that concludes our petition webinar. So should you have any questions, you may post them in the chat bar if they're not already there, or you can send us an email to petition@dca.ga.gov. And should you have any questions or concerns in the future, this will be our main line of communication with the petition process going forward. So please direct all questions to that email, and we will do our best to get back with you. And yes, as a note, this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to our website. We should have all of those up within the end of the week, early next week. So this will be a resource that you can utilize while going through the petition. And yes, we will also share this, we will also make this PowerPoint available to all of you. So we just received a question, and quote, so to clarify, if we only had minor issues with the original submission, then we could wait until the refresh, end quote. Yes, that is exactly what you can do. If you see the need to correct your data immediately, that is the purpose of the petition process. But yes, you can wait and submit data as part of the refresh. Okay, at this time, I don't see any additional questions. Like I said, should you think of anything or have any epiphany moments, petition@dca.ga.gov is your best bet to get any questions answered. That email address will be posted to our petition website as well, so if you can't remember it, just go on our website, go to the petition tab. We already have a series of FAQs, and if those don't fully answer your question, again, send us an email and we'll do our best to get back with you. At that time, I think we will conclude the webinar. I thank everyone for their time this morning, and we really appreciate working with you. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you.